Willkommen bei einer neuen Episode von Markenkraft. Für alle, die von Marken fasziniert und für ihr Wohlergehen verantwortlich sind. Welcome to another episode of Markenkraft. My name is Olaf Hartmann, and I have the great pleasure to speak today to a legend of the advertising and marketing world, and recently one of its most influential voices, Bob Hoffmann. I first came across Bob when he wrote in his great blog about the Pepsi Refresh project, which I hope he still remembers because I still want to talk to him about it, when Pepsi decided in 2010 to pour almost 100% of its media budget into digital, and which was celebrated in the industry as the future of marketing for its great success in terms of likes, clicks, and visits. It only had a minor flaw. It did not sell any Pepsi. Since then, I've been following his thoughts on advertising effectiveness and his take on what I call the digital haze marketers found themselves in during the last 15 years. In 2017, Bob wrote Badman, how advertising went from a minor annoyance to a major menace. It was selected as Best of Marketing in 2017. 5 years later, Bob revisits now with his upcoming book how advertising's tracking-based online advertising industry has developed since then and finds it more corrupt and dangerous than ever. A quote, "The tracking-based online advertising industry is a criminal racket of epic proportions. It is a giant worldwide scam, organized crime at a global scale that has been normalized by involving virtually every major corporation, every pretty-sounding trade organization, and the entire advertising, marketing, and digital media industry." Strong words. But my last guest on the show, marketing professor Mark Ritchen, says about Bob, he is fearless, an essential voice in an industry that turned a blind eye to the frauds and scams of digital advertising over a decade ago. An important perspective, a really good book. And David Weldon supports that, the former president of the World Federation of Advertisers. He says about the upcoming book, a tour de force, it deserves a massive readership. So I think this is enough praise to make you curious, and I would like to dive in with Bob now. Welcome, Bob. Great to have you on the show, and thank you for getting up so early for us.
Thank you, Olaf. Pleasure to be here.
Great. So to warm up, I'll ask you a quick fire round of questions.
Okay.
And you just answer whatever comes to mind, long or short. Mountaintop or beach towel?
Beach.
Beer or wine?
Beer.
Logic or magic?
Ooh, logic.
TV or TikTok?
TV.
Beatles or Bach?
Beatles.
Steve Jobs or Bill Gates?
Jobs.
Zuckerberg or Bezos?
Oh, anyone but Zuckerberg, even Bezos.
Bernbach or Gossage?
Gossage.
All right. What was the first job that you ever got paid for?
First job I ever got paid for. Well, I worked for my father in his dry cleaning shop, and I used to work there on Saturdays when I wasn't in school and on summers, and he would pay me $10 a week for my efforts. But my first real job was as a teacher. I taught mainly science for about 3 years in middle school.
Right. And what was your first experience that you had with brands that you remember, like growing up?
Oh boy, very little. I didn't pay much attention to brands other than, what I saw on television. And even then, did not have much effect on me. Really can't remember my first experience being aware. Naturally, you're aware of brands because everything is a brand that you buy. But nothing particularly affected me that I can recall.
But isn't it normal that we never feel affected by brands anyway? That we always think that we're above the influence of brands?
Yeah, well, I think as a child, at least I was. There were only a few things I was interested in when rock and roll and sports and girls. And so the you know the I never went to the supermarket. I wasn't aware of what was happening in groceries, or I wasn't interested in cars. So I was kind of a typical empty-headed kid who didn't pay much attention to anything except his own whims.
Right. So there was no love for the advertising industry yet.
No, I wasn't even aware of the advertise. I knew there were ads on TV, and I heard things on radio between records, but I was not aware of the advertising industry. Now.
And what made you change jobs then? Like working as a teacher, and how did you end up in the advertising industry? Like looking at
Well,
it now, in an industry which ranks lowest in popularity right now worldwide, and the
yeah,
trust is even below insurance salesmen.
yeah. I actually had no interest in marketing or advertising in school. I never took a marketing or advertising class. But after a few years of I hated teaching. I was a terrible teacher, and I did. Teachers are wonderful people. They are patient and they are nurturing, and I am neither patient nor nurturing. So I was just a very bad teacher, and I didn't like doing it, and I was not good at it. So one day, after a few years of teaching, I ran into an old friend of mine from college, and I asked him what he was doing. He told me he was working in advertising, and I knew nothing about advertising. I said, "What does that mean?" And he said, "The commercials on TV." I said, "Yeah." He says, "I write those." I said, "Really?" It had never occurred to me that people sat down and wrote those things. They just somehow appeared on television. I never imagined someone sat at a desk and wrote those. So I said, "Well, what's it like?" He said, "Oh, it's fun. I like it." He says, "You would be really good at this." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, because we had worked on some stuff together in college." And he said, "Yeah, I think you would be really good at this." So I said, "Okay, yeah, I'm game because I'm terrible at what I'm doing now. What do I need to do?" So he told me about creating a portfolio, and I created a little sample portfolio, and I took it to a headhunter, and she told me I would never get a job in advertising. And so, because I'm a pain in the ass, that automatically meant to me, I'm going to get a job in advertising. You'll see. And so I took it around, and I got a job. I got a job working for Panasonic, the electronics company, in their advertising department. And I worked there for a couple of years as a writer. And then I moved to San Francisco. I was everything before this. I was in New York City, but then I moved to San Francisco, and I got another job in a small agency, and it was a pretty lousy agency. And but I didn't know anything about agencies, and I didn't know anything about agencies in San Francisco. So I just went through the yellow pages, and the first one that came up, I went there, and they hired me.
And to give
And
this some perspective, like when was that? What time?
this was in 1973, something like that, a
Okay,
long,
so
long time ago.
Gossage wasn't around anymore,
Gossage was gone,
huh?
yeah.
Yeah.
But and I had never heard, like I said, I knew nothing about advertising or the advertising industry. So I got there, and it was a terrible little agency, and but I was kind of a New York wise ass guy, and we started to do some pretty good work. And eventually, we started to win some awards, and I became creative director of the agency at like 29. And then I became president of the agency, and pretty soon we were, not pretty soon, but after a while, we were the largest independent agency in San Francisco. And then we were bought by an international agency, and I worked for them for a few years, but I hated working for them. They were not my kind of people. And I had a 3-year after they bought us, I had a 3-year contract to work for them. But after 2 years, I negotiated my way out of that contract. I think they were easily as happy to get rid of me as I was to get out from under them. And so then I in my negotiation to get out of my contract with them, I was not allowed to work in advertising for a certain period of time. Part of the deal I made with them. So I started my own little creative services company, and I did that for 3 years, and those were 3 very happy years for me because, I just worked on my own, and I had a handful of people who worked with me on an as-needed basis. So I had no employees, it's just freelancers who helped me when I need it. Yeah,
Just to differentiate that, like the creative services company, like you were
yeah,
forbidden to work for another agency which was established, so
exactly.
competitors, but you could work in the
Right,
advertising as a consultant or like creative yourself.
right. Well,
Okay.
actually, for the first 6 months or the first year, I wasn't allowed to work in advertising at all.
Mm-hmm.
Not for myself,
Mm-hmm.
not for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
But after a while, the agreement, I was allowed to do advertising work, but not for another agency.
All right.
So that's when I did my creative services company. And so that was good, and it was very profitable. And I did some nice work, and I had clients, and I kept beating agency. I did this for 3 years on my own, and in the 3 years, I had 6 pitches against agencies, and I won 5 of the 6 pitches. So it gave me a little insight as to what clients really think about ad agencies, and how they would, you know, the I heard from clients very often, "Ooh, we're so glad we don't have to work with an agency. We can just work with you." You know
Right.
what I mean? And
And what was that? Like, what did they detest from working with agencies from your
They
memory?
thought that the only valuable thing they got from agencies was ads, and that the rest of it was baloney, and that, they behind our backs, they laughed at our strategic brilliance, and they laughed at the advice they got, and they thought that account people were worthless, that the account people kept the agency on track and added nothing to their um, to their
To
efforts.
business,
And
like really like created value for the business, like
yeah,
in that sense.
exactly.
Okay, yeah.
They said, why are we paying for account executives? All they do is keep the agency under control.
All
They
right.
don't really
Right.
do much for
It's
us.
interesting
So
how
that
you
that
describe it
that
because I feel right now
yeah,
there are many large accounts won by very small creative shops. Like there seems to be a movement in the one hand like to this really
yeah,
large networks, and on the other hand what you just
yeah,
described like to a structure where there
yeah,
are small creative shops that come together on project basis or as needed.
yeah. I think the only unique thing that agencies provide, in my opinion, the only unique things that agencies provide to clients are creative ideas and
Mhm.
imaginative thinking. That all the rest of the stuff that agencies provide, clients can get elsewhere. There's a million media buyers, there's a million strategic helpers, there are a million brand experts. But what agencies provide that they can't find elsewhere is really good creative ideas. At least that's the way it used to be. I'm not so sure agencies are providing so many
Yeah, we come back to that.
brilliant
We come back to that.
creative
But let's
ideas
continue
anymore.
with your
Yeah,
path. Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. That's good.
So after that, I did 3 years of just creative work, creative services. And then I kind of started to miss the agency business because ad agencies are great places to hang out. Um, they're not great places to work, but they are great places to hang out. And so I missed that. And so I had been offered a few opportunities to get back in the agency business. And actually, I was offered an opportunity to go work in the film business, to move down to Hollywood, and but that wasn't. I could see that was not my vibe at all, and I would not have been happy doing that. But I did. I was helping someone find. There was someone I knew who had a small agency, and he and his create. He was an account guy, and he and his creative partner split up, and he was looking for a creative partner. So he hired me to help him find a creative partner, and I found him 8 potential creative partners. He didn't like any of them; it didn't work out. And I knew all along he really wanted me to be his creative partner, and it was kind of. But I didn't want to get back in the agency business, and then through a series of silly mishaps, somehow I wound up. Doing it. And so I went into the agency business with him, and we were very successful for a long time. And then I retired several years ago, and he retired much earlier. He retired, I think, in 2004 or 2006. Then I retired. And since then, I've been, writing and speaking about advertising, and it's been a nice second career for me. It's actually been, in many ways, it has been more rewarding than my first career. Although my first career was more lucrative, this career is more interesting in a way because I get to say things that I really believe, and that uh, I don't have to hold back. When I was working in the agency business, I used to write about advertising a lot, but I had to be circumspect about what I wrote because I had people working for me. When you're the CEO of an agency and you say something stupid and a client reads it, you are likely to get fired. And when you get fired, if you're the CEO of the agency, you're not going to lose your job, but 20 or 25 other people might lose their job. So I had to be careful about what I said, even though I thought what was going on was kind of stupid in many ways. But ever since I have left the agency business and nobody works for me, and I don't have a job, and I don't have to, and nobody can fire me, I can say whatever I want. And so that's why I'm not really all that brave. I just have nothing to lose.
Yeah, it's wonderful because I guess we met at the beginning of your second career, basically virtually, because I started reading your blog, and to all my listeners, it's a must. So if you haven't read Bob's blog yet, Bob, where can people find the blog? It's I always
Yeah, I write. It is now a Sunday newsletter, and you can subscribe to it at Bob Hoffman's website.com.
Okay, bobhoffmanswebsite.com. It's
Yeah.
my Sunday night pleasure, I have to say. Every Sunday, it's like, there's Bob,
Good.
and
Good.
it's wonderfully written and obviously very insightful, and we're going to talk about what you write about recently a lot. But the first time that I got across that I came across you was about the Pepsi Refresh project, and we will dive in the other topic more deeply. But I think that for the listeners that have forgot, because it's 12 years ago, I think it would be valuable to do a recap, to refresh the memories. And
Yeah.
as it contains several very important lessons. So if you would support that would be great.
Yeah. In about 2010, when social media was all the rage, Pepsi decided they would take all their money out of their regular advertising and put it all into social media, and they created this thing called the Pepsi Refresh Project. And it was my guess is they probably spent $50 to $100 million on it. And this was in the era when people believed all the bullshit about, join the conversation, and people, and you would say something on Facebook and it would go viral. It was complete nonsense, but everyone in marketing believed it. And so Pepsi did that, and they did it for a year. They canceled their Super Bowl advertising. They canceled all their television advertising, and they made a big hoo-ha. And everyone in the marketing and advertising industry was so impressed at how forward-thinking and brilliant they were, and how this was going to be a huge success. And it was a disaster. They lost 5 share points. They went from their traditional position as the number 2 selling soft drink to number 3, and it was a total disaster. And they, 1 year later, they blew it up and went back. They went back to their normal sane advertising
Media mix
programs.
and,
Yeah, and the lesson that everyone should have learned was that social media marketing was mainly baloney. That people did not share what you put on social media, that there were no conversation. Anyone could have gone online and seen that people were not having conversations about brands. They were having conversations about everything else in the world except brands. But the marketing industry was telling us, oh, people, join the conversation. And so people couldn't believe their own eyes. They believed the bullshit instead. And it should have made it clear to the marketing industry that social media marketing, as it was then defined, was worthless or
yeah.
close to worthless.
And let's
And
pick that a little bit apart, because obviously
yeah,
people sit up straight right now. Like, how can they say
yes,
that this? Okay, just like you just said, how it was defined back then. It was like the end
right,
of traditional push advertising. Like, here somebody talks to you and disrupts something that you actually want to do, watch
right,
television and so on, and
right.
basically said, we're going to change this. I think Mark Zuckerberg was one that phrased it like
Yeah,
that.
of
It's like the
course.
end
Yeah,
of traditional advertising,
right,
and we will involve people in conversations, and that's going to generate the kind of relationship which creates brand love. Was around the same time. Yeah, suddenly you love brands, and
yeah,
all this has been debunked. And then
yeah.
the major source of income for Facebook is what? Push advertising, something that disturbs,
Traditional. Yeah,
something that disturbs your regular stream of the news of your friends or whatever, and then somebody
right.
breaks that. Yeah.
Yeah, Facebook and other social media were going to end advertising, and it was going to be about sharing and about conversations and all that bullshit. And what it turned out to be, Facebook is now the largest purveyor of that which it was supposed to replace. It is now the largest purveyor of traditional advertising. It is not, nobody in his right mind believes that people are, sharing and having conversations about brands on Facebook.
Yeah.
Facebook is ad after ad after ad. So, I,
And just to
I,
add to
I
that,
saw that yeah,
just to add
yeah,
to that, in Germany there was also this discussion, about trust when Facebook were involved in the Cambridge Analytica scandal and all that, which we talk about later. And what media did they turn to? They started to do outdoor advertising and print advertising. At a certain time, they were the biggest print advertiser in Germany. Yeah,
yeah.
and that was during a time where they needed trust. And if brands
Hmm.
is nothing else, it's in the end, it's a positive prejudice that people trust that you deliver on what you promise. And
Yeah,
why didn't they do that in Facebook? Yeah, like, why didn't they do it in stream advertising? Because
yeah.
it doesn't replace everything.
No. And so that was the Pepsi Refresh project, and they dropped it in about a year, and it should have been a lesson to the marketing industry. But of course, the marketing industry and the advertising industry never learns anything. We operate on legends and rituals. We believe all the bullshit that we read, and there are very few people in our industry who are willing to say, "Hey, wait a minute, this is wrong." And as a result, the advertising and marketing industry not only are not very trusted or liked, but they're not very effective these days. The effectiveness that used to come from advertising is um, is not quite what it was, and
And before we,
the
yeah, and
yeah, go ahead.
let's dive in there a little bit, like what your
Yeah,
take is on that. Like,
yeah,
the one thing obviously is the media mix. What
yeah.
other reasons do you see there? Well, like this effectiveness, why has it been in decline in the last 15 years, from your
Yeah,
view?
it's a good question. Let me write down some notes so I don't miss anything. Um, I'd say one reason is the culture of the advertising industry. The advertising industry used to be run by craftspeople, by practitioners of advertising, copywriters or art directors or researchers or media people or account people, and consequently, as an industry run by craftspeople, the craft was the most important thing. Now you had to make money too, of course, if you're in business, but craft was very, very important. The advertising industry is no longer run by craftspeople. It's run by financial people. It's run by Wall Street hotshots and people with financial backgrounds, and not people who ever wrote ads or bought media. For the most part, most of the you go into the C-suite of most holding companies, and it's financial people. It's not advertising practitioners. And any industry that it's not just advertising, any industry that goes from the people who actually know what the work is and goes toward the financial people as the leaders suffers the same thing. And that is the quality of the work becomes secondary to the financial results. And when that happens, the effectiveness of what they do goes down, customer satisfaction goes down, uh, enjoyment of the employees goes down. Wall Street people like it that the returns go up, but everyone else suffers. And when the only gauge you're using to measure your effectiveness is what your return is this quarter on your financials, then you're not going to be in an industry that is, in my opinion, healthy and quality oriented. You're going to be in an industry that is more focused on financial results. So there's the culture of the advertising industry that has changed because it is now run by Wall Street sharpies.
Mm.
The other thing that has changed, in my opinion, is that we don't have as many really talented people wanting to work in advertising as we once did. A lot of talented creative people have a new option. It's not really a new option, but have another option called the web, which they can work in and create things that are more interesting than advertising. And so, whereas there used to be a time when if you were a creative person, you had three options. Now you have four. So in the past, the three options were if you were a brilliantly creative person, you could be a novelist or a fine artist, right? And if you were very talented, but not brilliantly talented, you could work in TV as a writer or as a designer, and if you were talented but not quite great, you could work in advertising. So there were three tiers there, levels of talent. Now, that is not to say that there weren't brilliantly talented people in the advertising industry. There were, and there still are. But as a general rule, there were three tiers of creative. That at least the way I saw it.
It makes a lot of sense because the other like the top tiers, they are you must be super brilliant to actually earn money with it. And in advertising, you have an entry level and you can make a living quite quickly. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense that this sucks up a lot of creative people.
And then along comes the web, and here comes that there's a fourth entity, a fourth media type that you could work for as a creative person. And the web took, I think, a lot of the people who used to be talented advertising people, and they went to work at Apple, and they went to work at other places, because when you're working on a web entity, you can make a decision in the morning and do it in the afternoon. I mean, they work at a fast pace and you can get a lot of stuff done. If you work in an advertising agency, you got to go through a big, a WPP you got to go through 12 layers of approval inside the agency, and then another 12 layers at the client. And you very rarely get anything produced the way you want it to be produced. Everyone's got their sticky fingers all over it. And so as agencies became larger and more corporate, it became harder and harder to do good work.
That's very interesting take, Bob, I must say.
Yep.
I never thought of it like this. So basically, you're sucking the resource dry from these, and also startups, like the tech industry in general sucks up like the most intelligent and smartest, and then there's not much left. And then the advertising industry had a bad image. Also, the brand of the advertising industry itself became less attractive. Like working through the night, like the weekends and all that.
And there's one more factor that I think is responsible, and that is, for the past 20 years or so, in advertising schools, the young people were taught a certain truths about advertising. And sadly, the truths were about, it all came down to clicks. Advertising was evaluated on how many clicks it got. And in the early stages of advertising, that made sense. That advertising was really turning into direct response rather than a brand building. That the web was turning advertising into a direct response medium rather than a brand building medium, and how you attracted clicks and what you had to say and do to get clicks became like a key focus of what creative people were learning in art school. And those people went on and they got jobs and they got their clicks, and pretty soon they were promoted. And, after about 10 years or so, they became the creative directors of agencies.
And were responsible for brands then suddenly.
And they were, all of a sudden, they're supposed to be brand experts, and they're not. They were click experts, but they were running creative departments and still are running creative departments. And I think that has done, that's another reason that the creative work that agencies doing is not up to a standard that we would all like it to be up to.
That's also a good point. So basically, it's the mental models. I had Paul Feldwick on the podcast here, and he wrote this great book, The Anatomy of Humbug. So
he's great.
Where he
and Why the Peddler Sings.
Yeah, Why the Peddler Sings. So the mental models that basically shape our behavior and our decisions. And we have somebody in a picture, somebody who is very good in harvesting technology. Not to say that clicks are wrong or direct response communication is very, very important, but it always builds on a fertile ground of a strong brand, and then you can pick the fruits, obviously. So you have somebody who is an excellent technologically advanced fruit picker and put him in charge of the whole estate, where you also have to plant trees and take care of the ground so the trees grow well. But the only thing that he actually learned was like the technology of picking. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good analogy. And we didn't know what the web was good. When the web first became a thing, we didn't know what kind of advertising to expect. We thought I did at least thought it would be like radio or television or magazine advertising. It would be brand focused, but I was wrong, and it became, you know, pretty closely to pure direct response. It was the electronic version of clip this coupon or dial this 800 number, and became click here. And historically, that has been the shittiest kind of advertising. Doesn't have to be, but traditionally it has been.
yeah.
And if you look at the advertising industry, there are two lineages of advertising. There's the direct response lineage, and then there's the brand lineage. And the web could have been the brand lineage, but became the direct response lineage for some reason.
Because it's very effective in doing that. I mean, like not to put down what they do. I mean, the conversion of digital is amazing. It's really, really good in picking the fruits. Yeah, it's easy to find. Like Byron Sharp. Easy to mind, easy to find. The brand does the easy to mind, and then the web does the easy to find and the conversion. But I remember you had a very, very good insight. That's quite a while ago, where you said,
well, it must have been quite a while ago.
No. On that topic, I meant. Sorry, you have many good insights, but on that topic, you suddenly there was one newsletter you wrote, but I finally understood why brand building doesn't work on the web, and it had something with the social context. You remember what I'm hinting? Maybe that would be very good if you would explain that, because I found that that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's not really my idea. It's the idea of a guy named Kevin Simler. And he says that whether we want to believe it or not, there is a social context to brands that we all somehow internalize. And we don't want to be seen as using brands that are silly or goofy, or the brands we use to some degree tell a social story about us, about who we are, and that in order to feel that brands are part of the social context, the cultural context that we live in. And no one other than a sociopath wants to be seen as not getting the cultural context that they're in. And so online advertising, which is one-to-one kind of advertising, we don't know what our friends and neighbors are seeing online, because it's delivered to us. We're each in our own little digital cocoon, and we don't know what our friends are seeing and what our neighbors are seeing. But larger broadcast advertise, TV and outdoor and radio, we know what our friends are seeing, and we know what is culturally acceptable in a way, and that it's not enough that we think something is culturally acceptable. We have to know that others think it's culturally acceptable too, because they see it, because they know that they're not going to look stupid if they have an iPhone, if they drive a Ford truck, if they drink Coca-Cola. They're not going to be embarrassed by that or be thought odd or weird. But they don't know that about many online brands, because they don't know if anyone else is seeing it, and if anyone else knows what they know.
So what this basically means is that every time we perceive brand communication, there's an implicit basically construction that we make. How many other people see this. So the meaning that I just learned, how many other people know this meaning, and especially for brands that have external signaling value, this is very important to know what this means to the rest of the people around me. And
Right.
so like the sunglass brand that only I know because it has been advertised to me on my stream is something different from driving through Berlin at the Potsdamer Platz and see an outdoor advertising of 30 by 18 meters, which advertises Ray-Ban as the coolest new thing. Because I know there's so and so many million people like driving by seeing this. So when I wear the glass, they will know what it means.
Right. And that's why fame is such an important part of what advertising creates. When you're famous, you have such a huge advantage over your competitors who are not famous. And that's the main thing that advertising creates. And that's why I think one-to-one personalized the whole one-to-one personalized advertising thing is a complete wrong turn. That brands need to use media to become famous. The more famous you are, the more likely people are to be comfortable with you. And what advertising should be trying to do is create familiarity and comfort. And if my brand is familiar and comfortable, I have a way higher probability of being successful. And there's nothing black and white in advertising. There's no always or never. There's no guarantees. It's just likelihoods and probabilities. And if you're famous and you're comfortable, your likelihood and your probability of success is way higher than your competitors who are not.
And that's exactly what Paul Feldwick says, is like we've lost the ability to put on a show that people love to watch and that people talk about. So to be culturally relevant. Obviously, that's a little bit more difficult because the media channels are so widespread. So it is definitely more difficult than in the past where you just booked on your main TV channel and then everybody knows you. But the goal, like you just described, like the you call it the shortest briefing to an agency, make me famous. Huh? That's and that's what many people forget because they're like they go into the micro targeting like Procter & Gamble did, and then they pull out 200 million out of that channel and realize half a year later that nothing changed at the till, they didn't have. But to create this kind of one-on-one micro targeting, the industry has developed this monstrous technological tech stack. Which created also the dominance of digital media in the last years, like also attracting so much budget. Is like I think it's over 50% right now in the States, definitely. And in general, just to make this clear, you're not against digital advertising. You know, with your blog and your newsletter, you use it yourself. Yeah? It's like not to say like here, digital is terrible, but there's something terrible as a side effect in this that you write and blog about for quite a long time now, and that even got you invited to speak in front of the European Parliament, which is important enough. So let's spend the rest of our podcast to talk about this very important topic.
Yeah, the problem is tracking. And the problem is how the online advertising industry has become destructive to democratic societies and has resulted in one of the greatest frauds in history. And the online tracking industry is destructive and dangerous in 5 different ways. First, it's dangerous to individuals because the online ad industry is collecting ungodly amounts of information about us every day. And we know what happens when institutions know everything about us, when institutions know where we are all the time, who we're talking to, what we're saying, what we're doing. We know how destructive this is because we have a history of what happened with the KGB and the Stasi and the Gestapo, who knew everything about everyone. Very, very dangerous. But we don't know what happens when we have totalitarian marketing, when marketers know everything about us, everyone we talk to, everything we say, everywhere we go. We don't know what happens with that, but I promise you, it's not anything good. And and the other thing we need to realize is that governments are brilliant at inventing crises from which they will extract all this information from marketers. They'll say they have to have it, and they will get it, and that will create dangers. The second thing that is dangerous for us is it's dangerous for society. We see what happened here in the States on January 6th, 2021, when there was came very close to overthrow of our government. And part of the contribution to that was due to algorithms that platforms used in social media to drive a wedge into society. I don't want to go too deep into the woods here, but the tracking that they do about us is fed into algorithms, and your Facebook page looks completely different from mine because the algorithm knows what you're interested in, it knows what I'm interested in. And the algorithm feeds us ever more lurid notions of our own preconceptions to keep us on the platform as long as possible, because the longer we stay on the platform, the more money they can make by selling us to advertisers. And so the algorithms feed us into rabbit holes where we find people like us, but only a little more extreme than us. And the rabbit holes lead us into radicalization, which is nothing but trouble. And Facebook did a study, and in their study, they found that almost 2/3 of people who wound up in extremist groups on Facebook were sent there by Facebook's algorithms. So the idea, yes,
And
what were you going to say?
and
Yeah.
some response that you could have internally is like, yeah, but what's the problem? You know, I have nothing to hide. Is like,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. What would you say there?
Nothing to hide is so stupid. We all have something to hide. We just don't know what it is. I mean, just recently here in the States, the what's called Roe versus Wade, the Supreme Court decision that allowed women to have abortions was overturned, and now the people who are searching for abortion online, or are even just going to Planned Parenthood online or other women's health sites online, are being reported to the police because the police are interested in whether they are now breaking the law by considering an abortion or having an abortion. So we all have something to hide. The idea that I have nothing to hide is completely stupid, because we all have something and we just don't know what it is.
Just behind you on the bookshelves, you probably have some
Yeah.
books which might be forbidden soon. Yeah,
That's right.
And then the data about you buying this book is important information. And
Right.
yeah, so then, but now a brand, a marketeer could say, yeah, but is that my problem? You know, like that's
Yes.
something that needs to be done by the government. Yeah, but
Yeah. No, it is. It's the marketer's problem because because in society, the privacy rights of individuals and the integrity of democratic institutions are far more important than the convenience of marketers. And the idea that following us everywhere and keeping track of everything we do is essential to their business is bullshit. Television and radio and outdoor and print for decades were very successful and very profitable companies without spying on everyone and collecting ridiculous amounts of information on everyone. Is online advertising really that weak that they can only succeed by spying on us? Is that what they're trying to tell us? Is it that weak a force that the only way they can be successful is to spy on people? That's ridiculous. I don't buy it. I don't think they believe it, but they bullshitted regulators into believing it, and that's what we're stuck with at this point. I'm hoping that it's changing.
Let's play devil's advocate and say we have a marketeer that is like, that's too philosophical for me. That's above my pay grade. I'm paid to be successful as a marketeer. But even from that point of view, it might be worth one thing I already mentioned, that micro-targeting for Procter & Gamble has proven to be not as successful as they originally thought. So they took it out and they were more successful. But then this turns us to, does it really deliver higher value for, even if you say not brand building, but maybe conversion or like effectiveness of campaigns? That turns us to, are the numbers, like, can we trust the numbers that we get, like the clicks, the ads, the likes and the visits?
No, we can't. The amount of fraud that is going on is beyond belief. I mean, the click fraud is off the charts. The audiences that people are thinking they're reaching are largely bots. As a matter of fact, there's, according to Barracuda Networks, which is a research company, there's more activity by malignant bots online than there is by human beings. So everything you think you know about what's happening online is probably highly questionable. I mean, we know, most researchers say that for every 10,000 online ads that run, you get 5 clicks. It's hard to get much closer to zero than that, but even those 5 clicks are highly suspect, because we know there are click farms that are going all day, every day, 24 hours, just just automated clicking that makes someone some money. The fraud in online advertising now is probably, nobody knows for sure, but the most reputable people that I believe say it's probably over $60 billion a year in ad fraud. That means if it's $60 billion a year, that means it's a bigger business than Coca-Cola. It's a bigger business than Netflix. It's a bigger business than Nike. So online ad fraud is astoundingly large and continues to grow. And nobody seems interested in stopping it. Nobody seems to have an idea about what to do about it.
And there were two things that I found very intuitive, like when you described them. They were like some accidental research that happened.
Yes.
That basically exposed this, because it's like, I trust your source, I trust my source, you trust your source. I send you, I send you a link, and then you see. So there could be, there could be some skepticism about, the experts are bought and that. But then some accidental research happened, which you described, which was very convincing.
Yeah, what happened was there's a publishing company in the U.S. called Gannett, and Gannett publishes USA Today. USA Today is a popular newspaper and a popular website for news. Now, Gannett also happens to publish 250 little tiny community news sites as well. Accidentally, a bunch of researchers found that for 9 months, Gannett had been taking ad bids for USA Today, that winning ad bids for ads to run on USA Today's website, and accidentally were running the ads on all these little tiny community websites. So people who were the major brands who thought they were running advertising on USA Today were like running ads on the Ruidoso, New Mexico news site and the Lebanon, Pennsylvania news site, and nobody knew it. Billions and billions of ads ran in the wrong places and nobody knew it. The people buying the ads didn't know it. The ad agencies didn't know it. And the companies who report the results of the online advertising didn't know it. So that nobody knew where these ads ran. Nobody knew that they ran in the wrong places, and there were billions of them, and they went that way for 9 months until these two researchers happened to stumble on it. Now, how can billions of ads run in the wrong places for 9 months and nobody knows? And the answer is that the brands were getting reports telling them that their ads ran, everything they ran where they should. Here, we reached this many people, and it was all bullshit. It was all bullshit, and so it was an unintended test of how reliable not just the programmatic ad system was, but the reports that brands get that are supposed to be monitoring what they're getting are equally unreliable.
And the media agency will say, we have systems in place to avoid ad fraud and the numbers are real and all that. So that's, and whoever, because we could go on for 3 hours talking about this. So whoever is interested to take a deep dive into this topic, when does your new book come out?
My book will be out probably next week.
Next week. What a great timing.
Although in Europe, I'm not sure when it will appear on Amazon in Europe, but it's going to look something like this.
Okay.
It's called
People
Ad
can't
Scam.
see it, but it's called Ad Scam, and we'll put the link in the show notes, because when this is published, by that time it's going to be available on Amazon anyway.
That'd be great. I appreciate that.
So that's very important to dive a little deeper in there, and I can only advise your books because they are really a great fun to read. It goes like, even with a busy day, you have enough time. This is something you can do even like in your breaks, a half an hour break here. In 2 days, you got the book, you got it done. And then in discussion, suddenly it gives a wealth of information and you can dive deeper and then research the sources that you give and all that. And so we have two very important perspectives on this topic. The one thing is what we discussed, that this whole development of tracking and so on has societal influences, and it really, like you say, is a threat to democracy if this goes into the wrong hands. And I think at one point it will. I totally agree there. But the other thing is, like, from a professional point of view, you should be very wary of what is happening right now, is what you're being fed in effectiveness terms in your digital strategy. And that does not mean that you shouldn't include digital in your strategy, in your media mix and all that. But just be very wary when we're investing half of our money in the digital sphere. What do we actually get? Yeah. Do our brands really become stronger? Is it what we see? Is it a mirage, or is it real value that is delivered? So on the future, on this development, I know that you do a lot, you speak a lot. Like I said, European Parliament, you've been in the UK Parliament to talk about this, the dangers of tracking, but also on the just on the craft side, like what is the alternative? What do you see on the horizon for when Google, which has announced it several times now, taken back, when they say cookies are going to be dead, then suddenly this kind of tracking is not possible anymore. Where do you see the solution in that direction?
Well, I am hoping that what happens is that tracking per se is outlawed. It is banned. Because unless it is banned, what's going to happen is when cookies finally do go away, something equally onerous will take its place to track us. And that won't do us an ounce of good. What needs to happen is that tracking needs to be banned. Any kind of tracking. What I think and what I say in my book is that there are certain things that web entities should be allowed to do. They should be allowed, if we go to their website, they should be allowed to know who we are. They should be allowed to know our email addresses and be able to send us stuff. It's only fair. They're spending money to create a website. They're giving us entertainment. They're giving us education. They're giving us communication. But they should not be allowed to ever follow us anywhere once we leave their website. They should not be allowed to share our information with anyone else. They should not be allowed to sell our information to anyone else. They should not be allowed to allow other entities to put trackers on us when we're on their websites. So what I call it is shallow first-party information. They should be allowed to have that. They should be allowed to direct advertising our way, because advertising is how they make money, and it's only fair. We get a lot of wonderful things we like from the web, and they should be allowed to make money from it. So is advertising essential to the free web? Yes, it is. Is tracking essential to the free web? No, it is not. That's my point of view. And the way advertising has been conducted very successfully for decades, and a fair value, a fair exchange of value between the media companies and the viewers, is they should be allowed to show us advertising, but they should not be allowed to spy on us. That has worked for decades, and there's no reason it shouldn't work online.
And on a practical level, there's new research out. We've done also ourselves research on this. If you understand the context very well in which your ad appears, you can basically derive from that what goals are active in the minds of the people, like putting themselves into the context by opening a page, by clicking, by starting the TV and watching a certain program. And I think the research should go more in that direction to understand the context on a psychological level very deeply and align it to the values that you have with your brand. And that has been proven already, that context-sensitive media buying is more effective than the tracking kind of like that you reach the same person. Because if only reach would be important, just that as a last thought, if only reach would be important, it wouldn't make a difference if I would meet you, Bob, at a highway cafe in the bathroom, or in the champagne lounge in New York in a great hotel, because you're the same person, I'm the same person, so we meet, But the value of the champagne bar, obviously, immediately, intuitively, is a little higher than in front of the bathroom at the highway stop.
Yeah. And the advertising industry has been brilliant for years at finding the right audience for the right products. It's not a mystery to us how to do that. We've done it brilliantly for years and years, and we can do it online just as we did it in every other medium. We don't need to be spying on people. It's just not necessary. And as you say, it's not even clear that it's beneficial. I guarantee you, the day that tracking is banned and outlawed will be the day that Google and Facebook say, oh, our new way of targeting is even better than tracking was. I guarantee you they'll say that the day that tracking is banned. And that, you know what? They'll be right. It will be better.
Excellent. That's a very good point. I hope this was a very complex topic. I hope we close the circle for people. And as I said,
if not, they can read my book.
Exactly, they can read your book. What a great solution! Wonderful. This is fantastic. Besides your own book, I have a question. What resource would you point my listeners to? Like, is there a certain book that you gifted often, or something that you say this is worth outside your own books?
I love both of Paul Feldwick's books. Let's see, what else do I have? I have there's good writing. Richard Schotten has a wonderful book.
The Choice Factory he wrote, huh?
Yes, The Choice Factory.
We'll put that in the show
love
notes.
a book. Yeah, I love a book called Everybody Lies by oh man, I can't remember his name.
By Google. That was the guy from he used Google data.
Right.
Yeah.
Davidowitz, I think his name is.
That's enough. So people can
enough?
keep
Okay,
because
good
they still
deal.
have to buy your book, which is quick. Yeah, and then
Which is they ought to buy two of my books.
Exactly,
actually.
two of you. Which ones would you? Okay, which ones would you advise? Like the bag?
No, I'm just kidding. Ad Scam, the new one.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Advertising for Skeptics would be another good one to buy if you want to buy.
And my advice, laughing at advertising is very entertaining as well.
Good.
Fantastic.
Good.
So last question. You have the chance to put a screensaver on everybody responsible for brands in Germany for 1 month. Yeah?
For 1 month.
1 month, a screensaver. What would it say?
To everyone or just to advertising and marketing?
No, just the people responsible for brands, just for marketeers.
The best media plan is a great ad.
The best media plan is a great ad. Okay.
Yes, that's what I'd put on there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Screensaver.
Bob,
okay.
My sincere thanks. Thanks for getting up so early. I see in the background the sun is coming up.
Sun is finally coming up here.
That's right.
I'm gonna
have a second coffee and
I will.
It was a great pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Olaf. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Take care.
Und das war eine weitere Episode von Markenkraft. Vielen Dank, dass Sie dabei waren. Wir hoffen, es hat Ihnen genauso viel Freude gemacht wie uns. Wenn ja, empfehlen Sie uns, Ihren Freunden, Ihren Bekannten, Ihren Kollegen und bewerten Sie uns auf iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Soundcloud, egal wo Sie diesen Podcast hören. Share the love for brands. Machen Sie es gut für sich und die Menschen in Ihrem Leben.